Right. Okay. Good evening, everyone. How are you? Yeah, thanks for coming in this evening. Again, also hello to everyone online. I hope you're all well, and I'm happy to welcome you for our second part of this series of two short talks on how to tackle our misknowing of the nature of reality. And yeah, yesterday we started talking about how, from the Buddhist perspective, it is our own misknowing or our own misapprehension of the nature of things which acts as the main cause for all our suffering and unhappiness, according to the Buddha. We saw that it is our own ignorance distorting our view of reality which acts as the root cause for why we experience reoccurring dissatisfaction within cyclic existence, samsara, right? And we looked at this yesterday in terms of how ignorance misapprehends what the Buddha called the three marks of existence. How ignorance grasps that which is changing to be unchanging. How ignorance grasps that which is dissatisfactory, dukkha, to be satisfactory. And how ignorance grasps that which is selfless to possess a self. And from among these three, it is really the third, grasping that which is selfless to possess a self, which is our most fundamental form of ignorance. It is this mistaken belief, holding on to a fixed, independent self, when in reality, no such fixed, independent self exists. So it's this self-grasping ignorance, as the Buddha called it. It is that which causes us to experience attachment. And further, mental afflictions arise from that most fundamental form of ignorance, grasping at inherent self, at inherent I and mine. We start to cling, due to this misconception, to our identity. I, my possessions, my experiences, holding on to them to be I and mine. And that is basically where all our confusion begins. So recently I came upon this story, this short story about a
rubber tip that went over your Apple Pencil. That's what these feel like, because it is a rubber tip, but it's like a tiny one.
A rubber tip, but a tiny one. Thank you. Bye. Okay. It's a story about a reporter or a journalist who waits for the train on the train station. And while he's waiting for the train on the train station, he spots a Buddhist monk sitting on another bench. So the young journalist reporter decides to interview the monk. So he goes over and he asks the monk, "Sir, what would you say is the world's biggest problem? Is it climate change, global warming, environmental destruction? Or is it poverty, political instability, corruption, conflict, wars?" And the monk looks at the reporter and gives him a very benevolent smile and says, "Let me ask you a question first. Who are you?" And he says, "Well, I'm a journalist, a reporter." The monk says, "No, that's your profession, that's your job. Who are you?" And he says, "I'm Peter Miller." And the monk says, "No, that's your name. Who are you?" He says, "I'm a human being." Hesitantly, right, he says. The monk says, no, that's your species. Who are you? And this goes on for a little while until the young journalist gives in and says, all right, okay, I guess I don't really know who I am. And the monk says, this is the world's biggest problem. So when we really begin to dig down and ask ourselves, who am I? What is I? That we are not at all sure about that, actually, is our main problem. From the Buddhist perspective, how we misperceive the I is the main issue. The problems we experience in our personal life and on a global scale, the Buddha would say, it comes from that very root issue, misperceiving I and phenomena. So, how we experience ourselves as a person, as a self, as an I, who and what we are, how we intuitively hold ourselves to exist as me, as I. In Buddhist wisdom practice, we start to check, is our initial view of I actually correct or not? And we never really ask ourselves that question, do we? I don't know if you do, free time to check that, but rather rarely we check, is the view that I have of myself as an I actually a correct view or not? The Buddha discovered that at the moment, as people, as sentient beings, we exaggerate what the I is. We exaggerate what the self is. We overpronounce it. We overinflate the I. At the moment, we have an exaggerated sense of me. We believe in, we are holding on to a solid, independent, separate self being here. I. When someone says your name, then there is the feeling that this name refers to a me in here, which is very concretely there, right? As if there's something inside here that you can point to, where you can say, that is I, the real me. That's how it feels, no? What is that, though? What are we really talking about when we're talking about I? Is the question. So when we think I, we intuitively experience there being something very concretely here, something very tangible that you can touch almost. I, having its own unchanging essence. That's our gut feeling of a concrete I being in here. And then, in turn, everything begins to evolve around this I. This I being really of utmost importance, isn't it? This I then should be seen, it should be recognized by others, it should, as at best, become famous, popular, successful. It should be appreciated by others. It should be respected by others. It should be loved by everyone. Our whole perspective of how we relate to the world is through the thought I. And our whole life then, in turn, evolves around basically two things. How can I get what makes me happy from the world? And how can I be free from or avoid what makes me unhappy from the world? But what is I? Where is it? What is it? So, as we did yesterday already a little bit, let's look at this again in some more detail. And you can approach this session here a little bit like a meditation, actually, like an analytical meditation. I would like you to really look at or analyze your own experience while you listen to this presentation here. When you ask yourself, when we ask ourselves what the I is, we often, first of all, have the feeling, I am my body. And that's basically, doesn't seem so wrong initially, because there's a few good reasons why it seems to be totally correct to say, I am my body. What are a few good reasons to think, I am my body? Well, because when my body sits, I sit. When my body walks, I walk. When my body feels healthy and well, I am healthy and well. When the body is sick with fever, I have fever. I am sick, right? So that feeling can be strongly there. I am my body. But are we our body? If we say, yes, this body is me, then we have to ask ourselves, well, which part of the body am I? Am I my head? Or any part of my head? Am I my throat or chest? My right arm? My left arm? Am I my hip? My right or left leg? My toes? When you look at each part of the body, one by one, slowly, do you have the experience, do you have the feeling that one of these parts is who you are? No. We don't feel that, do we? We don't feel that our big toe is me. We don't have the feeling that my left hand is I. It's a part of me. It's something I have. But it's not my entire experience, is it? We don't feel that. If you were to go deeper, below the skin, the muscles, the heart, the lung, the intestines, the spleen, the kidney, the various organs in your body, the blood, the fluid, bodily liquids, your bones, the marrow. What part of this body that we don't see now, but we know is kind of in there, when you analyze, what part do you feel is you? Are you your lungs? Are you your heart? Or maybe your kidney, your liver, your two eyes? Yesterday we already said, right? When you look into somebody's eyes, you look at them. But that's only the case when the eyes are exactly at that particular spot where you want them. When you take the two eyes and put them on the couch, are you looking at a person when you look at these two eyes? No, right? Sometimes people say, I am my brain. That's who I am in here. The brain is the I, the brain is the person. Well, if you think about, the person you love, for example, the person you are in a romantic relationship with, or you hope to be with that person in a romantic relationship soon, whatever it is, your partner, your husband, or whatever, do you love their brain? When they have an operation and they put out the brain, put it there, and you look at the brain and think, ooh, hello. Look at that prefrontal cortex. It's not the case, right? The brain is a part of that person. But the brain is not the I. Neither is any other part of the body an I. You see, when it comes down to it, when we analyze, we do not really feel that we are the body in the end. The body and its various parts is an obvious aspect of me, with all of its parts and components, but we cannot actually pinpoint or find an I anywhere in the body. Would you agree or not? Okay. So what about the mind then? What about the consciousness? We might feel, and that's often what people feel, I am my mind. I am my consciousness. And that one is a little bit more difficult, isn't it? To analyze also. Maybe I am my mind. Maybe my consciousness is me. Because what would be a few good reasons to say that I am my mind? Well, when my mind is happy and relaxed, I am happy and relaxed. When the mind is depressed and very sad, I am depressed and sad. When the mind is stressed, I'm stressed. When the mind is easygoing, I'm easygoing. So that feeling can be strongly there. But again, are we our minds? Here again, we need to see that the mind also, just as the body, has many different parts. What are the parts of the mind? You can discuss this in various ways, but on a relaxed, easy level, there are thoughts, feelings, attitudes, certain views, certain factors of the mind like compassion, wisdom, kindness, love, hope. Harmful aspects in the sense of harmful mental states like delusions, attachment, anger, pride, jealousy, various states of mind that are relating to each other, sometimes more present, sometimes less present, a flow of consciousness that is constantly changing, fluctuating. These states are coming and going, right? These mental states. Is the I any one of those? Yeah, if you were to take one particular mental state, for example, let's, for example, take the state of fear or worry. You take that state of, when the mind has a lot of worry, being afraid or being anxious, and then you check, is that the I? Am I fear? Am I worry? Is this mental state of worry I? It can't be, right? Because when the I would be worry, then you would always necessarily 100% without a single millisecond of break have to worry. You would worry all the time because you are worry. And you couldn't feel anything else ever because you are fear. Right? Is that the case though? No, although sometimes fear, worry, anxiety might be very, very present. To a degree where we think it's somehow always there a bit, might be the case. Yeah. But it does not envelop our entire experience all the time, 100%. There's also other mental states arising where you feel, oh, today I feel better, I feel confident. you know. So also that doesn't really work out, does it? Same with other mind states. Am I happiness? Well, no, because sometimes I don't feel so happy. Its causes and conditions change, and my mind is influenced by that. And depending upon how my mind, in what state it is in, that is how I feel. So there's a relationship between I and mind, but they are not exactly one and the same. Although we might feel, maybe I'm my consciousness. Doesn't really work. And here again, sometimes it helps if you put it on another person. That's an example coming from Venerable Thubten children, which I heard one time, and I find it very effective, actually. You know, when you think about somebody else, again, think about the person that you love, your beloved, you know. Maybe the person I love is their mind, their consciousness. Think about it. And then Venerable Thubten children says, okay, take your loved one's consciousness and put it into a different body. Take your loved one's consciousness and put it into the body of someone else of the opposite sex of what they are right now. And make that body 74 years old. Or 12 years old, whatever. You have it? Kind of? Do you still have the same feeling that the consciousness is the person? Not only, right? Also here, when it comes down to it, when we really analyze like that, it's a bit edgy. We do not really feel that the consciousness is the person, the I. Again, consciousness is an integral part of I, of who I am. But we cannot find an I anywhere in consciousness when we look for it. Can you see that a bit? A little bit. So, okay, here we have it. We can neither find an I in the body and its various parts, nor can we find the I in the mind and its various parts. So there's another alternative now. Another alternative would be, we're just analyzing here a bit, just going into detail. We might feel, okay, yeah, my body on its own is not the I, my mind on its own is not the I. But if I put all of these parts together, mind and body, if I put them together, that is the I, the solid me. Now, the problem with that one is, if none of the parts is I, none of the body parts is I, we have checked, can't be found. None of the mental parts or consciousness in itself is I, we have checked. Now, if I put together a group of things which are individually not self, not I, by just putting them together, now you get an I, like that. Body and mind individually, not self, not self, not person, not person. We analyze. Now you just heap them together, body, mind. How, just by doing that, can there suddenly be this truly existent self that feels so concrete to be there? None of the parts individually are an I. How does putting them together suddenly make them an I? Another way of thinking about this is, well, okay, body and mind, put them together, but it's not enough to just put them together. You have to put them together in a very specific way until your mind then decides, person. Why? Well, if I put one of my arms over here, one arm over here, right arm over there, my head up here, my knees down there, intestines, you rearrange this body suddenly, and if you could, let's just imagine you put kindness here, happiness there, love here, stress here, the mental states, you feeling, discrimination, put them, then you have just this heap, but there's no I there. It's just a huge messy heap of body parts and mental parts. They are all together, but they are not I, although they are together. Just like when you have a car, an automobile, a car, where all the parts are arranged in a particular fashion, then you say, there's a car. But if you put the parts apart, then at some point car disappears, where you think, yeah, there's parts, but just by putting parts together, which are in themselves not car or not I, just the act of putting them together doesn't make them an inherently existent car or I. And B. We are not the collection of body and mind either. But then we are also not something totally separate from the body and mind. The I is also not something which is completely distinct from the body and mind. Because if that were the case, if there would be a kind of solid I, totally apart, independent from body and mind, well, in that case, I could say that my body and mind are sitting here, whereas I am up in the kitchen. Body and mind could be in India, whereas I, the person Wangdu, is in Austria. It also doesn't work. The sense of I that we have is always kind of together with the body and mind. But you cannot find it in the body and mind. You cannot find it separate from the body and mind. So you see, when we analyze in this way, keep our train of thought going in that analysis, we can see that in some way our notion, our idea of there being a concrete I here is a little bit strange. It's a bit confused, wouldn't you agree? Because, and it's important to kind of keep connected with that initial feeling of I that we have usually, when I think I, if that big fat me were actually to exist, if a solid concrete me, that feels to be present here so concretely, that feels to be so totally there, if such an I existed, we should be able to find it somewhere. We should be able to pinpoint it, because that's how it feels, that this concrete I is somehow here. And yet, when we look for it, when we analyze, we cannot really find the I. Neither inside the body and the mind, nor apart, outside of the body and mind, can we find this I. So this self, this I that we think we are, this independent self that controls everything, that is in charge, we cannot find it anywhere. So what kind of conclusion can we draw from this?
There's no I here.
It's not there. It is not there. You can't find it. It's not there. When as a child, I don't know if you had that experience, but sometimes maybe some of you, like me, as a child, had sometimes trouble to fall asleep because you were afraid in a dark room alone, on your own, alone in the dark, because you maybe thought there's a monster in my closet, or there's a monster under my bed. Right? Had that experience sometimes? You're afraid, right? And you can't sleep, and you're really afraid because you're convinced there's a monster there, somewhere in the corner, in the shadow, in the dark. So you maybe stand up and go to mommy and daddy and say, Mommy and Daddy, I can't sleep. There's a monster in my room. Well, what will mommy and daddy do? They will first say, oh, darling, there is no monster in your room. But that doesn't really help. Mommy, there is. You are convinced. Just by mommy telling me there is no monster in the room, it doesn't help me to get rid of my fear. So what will mommy or daddy do? They will take me by the hand, go to my room and turn on the light. Right? They turn on the light, all the lights we have, and say, okay, let's see if there is a monster in your room anywhere. Shall we look for it? Okay. So you look in every corner, you look under the bed with a flashlight, you open every drawer, you open the cupboard, you check behind the curtains, you check every single corner. And you as a child, you see it. You say, look, it's not there, it's not there, it's not there. what is the conclusion that you come to? That it's not there, right? And through that conviction, you have checked everywhere, even though the light will be turned out, there's less fear. Right? Because you checked it's not there, for sure. When we assume there is an independent I here, this feeling of I that in fact causes us all of our troubles, all of our attachment, all of our anger, all our selfishness, and so forth. But when we turn on the light, we take the flashlight of our own discriminative knowledge wisdom, and we begin to look at every corner of body, mind, and apart from it, we cannot find it once we look for it, neither inside the body and mind complex, nor outside of the body and mind complex. What is our conclusion? This concrete I is not there. It does not exist. This does not mean, though, that there is no I whatsoever. That's, of course, always the part that we have to kind of investigate and kind of get our head and feeling around. There is an I that exists conventionally. There is a conventionally existent I, a conventionally existent person here. There is a mere me here that exists independent upon body and mind, as we will see shortly. But the point here is, with respect to that feeling of a solid, concrete, independent me, I, this big ego I want this and not that. And it has always been like that because this is just who I am. You know what I mean? No. That appears to be so truly there, existing totally from its own side, like so strong to a degree where you think, well, if that doesn't exist, what exists? And it's not there. It's not there. When we begin to see that a bit, just if we begin to taste this, that the I does not exist the way it appears, it begins to change our feeling about who and what we are. If there is no big, solid ego me, if that doesn't exist, then why do I have to be the best in everything? If there is no real independent I, why do I constantly need approval by others that I'm doing great? Why do I have to win the gold medal? Why do I have to be on the front page? Whatever it is. You see, if we check all the things we do in our life, to some degree or the other, is in order to make this I happy. All the behavior we engage in is we do it in order for us to be able to get what we want. All the energy we put in to please this I, to be the first, to have material gain, to have success, to have the pleasure, to have the praise, the good reputation, the approval, the promotion. All of this is actually not necessary. It can fall away. If you could now drop the idea that you need to be the best, that you need to be seen, that you need to be recognized and be approved of by others, if you could drop that right now, how would you feel? How would it feel? A little bit of a relief, maybe? Like pressure turned off of having to prove yourself to the world constantly? Wouldn't it be a kind of a, wow, an openness that arises if we can see that this, this holding up and constantly convincing the world of me being all right, and having to convince myself even that I am Okay. When that can be dropped so we can simply be, wouldn't that be a relief? That what is already enough. We can still be successful, we can still strive to fulfill our aspirations, but the pressure button is turned off. That is a bit the point that I'm trying to convey to you here. If we don't grasp and cling so much on a concrete I, self-existent me, we would be able to be much more creative and free with respect to how we go about our lives, with respect to how we relate to other people, much more freely, more openly, spontaneously, more confidently, I think, being less attached to this apparent fixed self-identity that we always have to defend and always have to mask and design so it shines in the eyes of everyone. You know? Since we realize, well, we do not exist in that solid, concrete way anyway, as such. There will be less grasping and identifying with our fleeting emotions. When negative emotions arise, like anger or jealousy or fear or pride, whatever it might be, we would be able to see them as temporary mental states, arising, passing, coming and going. They are dependently arisen due to causes and conditions that arises in my mind. But it's influenceable, it's workable, it's impermanent. You know? Temporary states. They are not something that define me. I am not my emotions. I am not my thoughts. These are fleeting, dependent arisings. We don't identify ourselves so much with them, being less concrete about ourselves, more fluid. I think we would therefore be able to be much more inspired to work on ourselves and develop ourselves, because the belief in a fixed I is not so much there. You know, having to put myself into a rigid role of identity. This is me. I've always been like that. I'll always be like that. Because sometimes deep down we have the feeling I can't change. Yeah, these Buddhists talk about everything is impermanent, change. Yeah, it sounds very nice. But there is this essence within me here that change. And this essence is often not shiny, bright, open, and relaxed. It's often a bit black and narrow and negative. We often identify with that, right? If we see that such a negative, small, black essence that is my true me, and I hope nobody will recognize what I actually am, so therefore I have to play this show all the time for society. Because if anybody would see what I really am, maybe they wouldn't love me, they wouldn't like me. Right? That fear is horribly painful, isn't it? If we could drop that, that negative essence, I don't know if you feel like that, but some people really do, it's not there. It doesn't exist. We feel like it due to past habit. And we identify with it, we make it very strong. But in the end, it's not there like that. There is nothing fixed, no fixed I rock in here. We are a completely dynamic, changeable phenomena, a dependent arising. So we say, realizing that there is no independent, solid I. This realization is the realization of the emptiness of I. Emptiness, not in the sense of there is no I at all, you don't exist, and you're just empty. Not in that way, that's wrong understanding. But emptiness in the sense of something not being there, namely this concrete independentness that we wrongly grasp onto is actually not there. Because the I that exists in a much more relational way. The I that exists in a dependent way. Namely, based on this combination of body and mind, physicality and mentality, which are working together interdependently from moment to moment within the law of cause and effect. Based on that happening, that stream of happenings, we designate I. We mentally label, we conceptually designate I, person, Wangdu, Akshay, Divya, Susan. There is nothing within this combination of body and mind that is I. Cannot find. There is nothing in there that is, oh, there's the person here in the corner. There's Wangdu, like a small little diamond that has Wangdu engraved on it, sitting somewhere here. Can't find. But we can validly still say, Wangdu sits here on this platform, speaking non-stop. There is people in this room. There is people online, right? People are there. Things exist. And I exist. Nobody, the Buddha never said that you as a person don't exist. That would be a wrong understanding. Like, oh, nothing matters, I don't exist. No, nothing exists anyway. Everything is empty. Nothing's there. So nothing matters in the end. It's all an illusion. That's a complete wrong understanding of the Buddha's profound insight into emptiness. We should think about it in terms of dependent origination. Dependently, relationally existent persons. Not having any independent self-existence in and of ourselves. That's how we feel, right? Me here, you guys over there. Me hoping you like this talk, whatever. You hoping maybe I can go for dinner soon. Whatever it is. You know? That we experience ourselves like that and others. But that actually, that boundary that we draw is not actually there from the side of us. We draw that boundary. It's designated by mind. So the I that exists is designated by the mind in dependence upon body and mind. The person does not exist from its own side. It exists as a mere convention. It exists while it is empty of independent inherent self-existence. There is no independent nature in someone or something that makes that person or that thing what it is, independent of other things. Right? So this mere designation, being merely labeled by the mind, that is how I exist. This is what we call the mere I. That is there. But then we apprehend that mere I all the time and think, real I, totally there. That's where the trouble starts. Are we talking to each other, or am I just talking? Does it make a little bit maybe? People online also, a little bit maybe. Okay, we'll try our best. Yeah, maybe I have a question.
What if your sense of I is not so self-aggrandizing? What if your I or your motivation to be I is something more altruistic, like you want to do better? If you are, say, a cancer researcher, you want to be hard on yourself so that you get the right result. I'm a lawyer.
Yes.
So I want the right result for my client.
Yes.
I want to, say, alleviate suffering in some way.
Yes.
I'm a commercial lawyer, I don't alleviate any suffering. But what if your motivation is something apart from you? That's one level. And the other is, we come to expect certain things of certain people. We come to expect certain things of certain brands. When you check into a Taj hotel, you expect a service of a certain caliber. You expect a Lexus car to be a Lexus car. So when that aspiration is built in to being of a certain level, is that also, how do you reconcile that with the emptiness?
Well, let me ask you, does your expectation of something to fulfill, when you expect something of something, does that expectation ever lead you to the experience of suffering? Yes, right. Does the expectation that you have of a particular service, of being of a certain caliber, of a particular person to be a certain way, of you yourself having to perform in a certain way, does that ever lead you to disappointment, frustration, and disillusionment if that expectation is not fulfilled? That here is the point. Because here we can see that our expectation being infused by the grasping of concrete existence. This is like that. I am like this. I am that. That's why I'm going, and I'm a winner. I am successful. I don't lose. And if I'm about to lose, I'm going to turn it around. But then one time we lose due to causes and conditions playing out. And then that picture of ourselves, what I am, might be scratched, if not shattered. Can't that lead to a sense of completely losing our composure? Doesn't that lead to anger, frustration, jealousy, competitiveness in an unhealthy way, So here my point being a bit, all of these expectations come from a certain grasping at concreteness and lead to suffering. It does not mean, however, that if you really realize dependently relationally existent me here, relationally existent world, that you cannot have aspirations to fulfill your goals in the best way you can. It doesn't mean that you shouldn't have an aspiration to be successful, or maybe, no, as you said in the beginning of your question, to benefit others, to relieve suffering, trying your best to do what you can as a mere I, to use your talents, your skills that you have developed due to dependent circumstances, whatever they are, to use them with your positive motivation, the wish to relieve suffering and to bring happiness. That's wonderful. That's totally valid. And it should be done, as I'm going to talk about in a minute, a little bit later probably. Yes, absolutely valid. We don't throw that out. Emptiness or dependent origin refers to dependent origination here. We can maybe call it the absence of the concreteness that we usually grasp onto, which gives rise to unrealistic expectation, which gives rise to suffering. When that is absent and gone, and there is no unrealistic expectation, in fact, maybe no particular expectation whatsoever, but just aspiration to work in a particular direction. You do your best you can. If it works, wonderful. If it doesn't, well, it didn't. I'll continue. I'll not give up, right? There's less suffering, less grasping, less unnecessary disappointment and affliction arising. Based on that compassionate aspiration, based on this wisdom. You see that a bit? Make sense? Yeah? Wonderful, thank you. It's really, when we realize this, or what I'm trying to express to you here when we study this a bit more, and we studied a lot, and we try to establish that wisdom that realizes the emptiness of the I and phenomena. Not the non-existence of the I and phenomena, but the absence of this strong concreteness that we wrongly project, that we wrongly grasp at. The wisdom that realizes that this is not there, that realizes the absence of inherent existence. That wisdom will counteract our self-grasping notion, the conception of the grasping at inherently existent I and mine and independently inherently existent world. That will lessen. Why is that so important? Why is that so significant? Because all our attachment, anger, our possessiveness, our grasping at others, grasping at ourselves, our self-cherishing, jealousy, pride, our arrogance, our unrealistic outlook, all our delusions, mental afflictions, which cause our minds to be agitated, and which cause us to engage in actions that harm others, which cause us to suffer in turn, and actually cycle within samsara, life after life after life. All of that comes down to that basic misconception, seeing I and phenomena as independently self-existent, whereas they are not independently self-existent. So therefore, like His Holiness says, the wisdom that sees the emptiness, or that sees that the I is empty of that wrong mode of existence, that is a mind, a wisdom that is directly opposed to that wrong conception grasping an inherent existence, which underlies everything we do at the moment. And it, therefore, that wisdom can over time heal our ignorance and lead us further, further, further to more final, lasting states of happiness. The happiness that comes from fully realizing the nature of how things actually are, which we at the moment completely misapprehend. Maybe a lot of words, maybe a little bit difficult. That's okay though. In addition to that, why does that have anything to do with me? In what way? How does that matter for us practically? When we not realize that fact that the I simply does not exist in that concrete, solid way, the way it appears, when we don't have that realization, then due to it always that grasping at inherent I and mine, what comes with that also is that we have a very strong sense of self-centeredness, what is called self-cherishing within this tradition. Self-centeredness, self-cherishing here means the mind of being selfish, the self-centered attitude. Me first. I am the most important here. My happiness is more important than the happiness of others. Being egocentric. Based on that grasping of an inherently existent I, we also think, yes, this universe evolves around me. My happiness, my success, my relationship, my holiday, my work, my problems, my divorce, my difficulty, my sickness, me, I, and mine. So that self-cherishing attitude is another very strong cause for us feeling miserable. Being so centered on this self here totally limits our view. Namely, it totally limits and narrows down and imprisons our potential that we have to actually open up and realize what we actually are. That we are one part of this huge experience of what we call existence. When we just think I, what do we not see? We don't see others. We don't realize others. We don't have compassion and love because we are blocked, preoccupied with the cherishing of this apparent I. The attitude of thinking oneself being the most important, this I, this whole universe evolving around this I, it brings us a lot of distress, in fact, actually. It brings us a lot of suffering, apart from it simply being not true, simply being not in accordance with reality. It's a cause for so much confusion. Because if you think about it, I, me, I'm just one living being. Uno, just one. Whereas others out there are numberless. Experiencing themselves as a self, as an I, just like I do. So why am I so much more important than others? What is it about this me here, apparently, which is so important that I have to worry for all my life about it, It's a very interesting contemplation to make, when we come to this insight that this I, this me, this self, It exists as I, me, self, only to myself. It's only me, myself, that sees myself as I. You know what I mean? Whereas everyone else sees me as other person. You follow me? Right? It's a really I often mention this also in my intro courses. It's a very interesting contemplation to make. And I try to do it, especially when I'm actually in Bodh Gaya. I just came from Bodh Gaya 10 days ago, maybe. No, a week ago. I spent a month there, and Bodh Gaya is a very busy, very holy, but also a very busy place. So many hundreds of thousands of people often coming together, especially when His Holiness the Dalai Lama teaches, which didn't happen this year, but we very strong prayers that it will happen again soon, next year, or like this winter. But anyway, if you are there, there's all these people around the Mahabodhi Stupa. You know, it's very busy. Pilgrims from all over the world come. You know, Buddhists, pilgrims, but also from other traditions. It's a very inspiring place, but very busy. So you're in there, and then, you know, sometimes what I try to do is to stand there or sit there at the Bodhi tree, looking around, seeing all these people, and then noticing that all these people, when they look at me, when they make eye contact with me, when they walk around me, or when they talk to me, what they see is other person. They don't see this I, this Wangdu in here, looking out. They don't see this self that I think I inherently am. They see other. To them, I exist as other. For everyone there, I exist as other. As one of my meditation leaders in Kopan, Venerable Tingyal, so beautifully said, if you take the 8 billion people in this world, just the people, don't think about the numberless animals, 8 billion people, then you exist about 8 billion times more as other than as self. Isn't it true? I mean, it's a fact. It's not made up. This is how it is. So like that, if you really meditate on this while you are in the middle of a crowd or something, you just sit down, you just think about that, you know, to become more familiar with that very humbling, very freeing recognition. I am just another other. Just another other. Doesn't mean I'm unworthy or something. No, no. Yes, one, but so is everyone else. So we start to look at life in that way. We open up with this view that is much more in accordance with reality. It becomes our inner attitude, our new inner perspective. It's very exciting, actually. It can be very fulfilling to train your mind to transform your view from self-centeredness, grasping at me-ness, I-ness, to the centeredness of everyone. Which, according to the Buddha, other-centeredness, according to the Buddha and all these countless masters after him, is where genuine happiness actually arises from. And where all our suffering comes from is grasping at I and cherishing it all the time, in a sense of being overly preoccupied with it. Which is at the moment what we do, right? We all go about our lives secretly feeling, I am the one. Like Neo in the Matrix, when Morpheus says, Neo, you are the one. Right? And we see it on the screen and we think, yeah, I am the one. It's me. We love it. We like that in movies. As I often mention, that's one reason why I think these Marvel movies, superhero movies, are so successful. Because it's about this one person that in the beginning is kind of a normal, maybe a little bit odd or weird person, but then suddenly a spider bites the person and they get these super spider powers and they become Spider-Man and they defeat the hero and get the girl in the end. living happily ever after. It's this powerful feeling of I, me. We see that in the cinema, we enjoy it, and then we walk out of the cinema and we find ourselves being in our own movie, right? In our own film, going through our own movie where we are the main character all the time. You know, we all have our movies going on in our minds, don't we? All the time. You are the main character. Everyone else is just a side character, side actor. Here's the star. Not only are you the main character in your movie, you are also the director of the movie, you wrote the screenplay, you are the producer, you put on the lights, you know, everything, kind of. We really think it's about me here, isn't it? I am the main actor in this existence. Others are side actors. But you see, with that attitude, you put yourself in a completely impossible situation, don't you? Why? Because everyone else will simply not agree with you being the main character. They think they are the main character in their movie. They are the main thing. They are the one. So here we are. We all have our stories going on, don't we? We love our stories, isn't it? We cling to our stories all the time. This is me. This is who I am. This is my past. This is what happened to me. This is what's happening now. This is what should happen from now on. This is what will happen next. The Buddha says, give yourself a break of that. For your own happiness' sake, give yourself a break of your preconceived story of inherent I and mine. He says it in a nice way, in a compassionate way, right? This whole idea here is, instead of clinging and grasping and cherishing I, always being the one, we kind of take a breather and we allow ourselves to stop being the one, to stop being the main character, but instead noticing, I'm just one of the ones, as Professor Robert Thurman says so beautifully in one of his talks. I'm just one of the ones. Everyone else is the one as well. Everyone else is just as much the one as I am the one. So here we are in this together. When we realize that, we become more open. We let go. We have space to breathe. We become more realistic. We become more in tune with how it actually is. And eventually we will become altruists, compassionate people. We eventually become bodhisattvas. We want to help others. We want them to be just as happy as we ourselves want to be happy. And we open up from our fixed story of inherent I and mine. And that brings happiness. That's the whole point. Holding on to a fixed I and mine brings suffering. So to really understand that we simply don't exist as a separate, independent self. I mean, we can remain ignorant as long as we insist upon it. We can keep going through this life, life after life after life, grasping at inherent I and mine, and cherishing that I for myself thing. We cherish some other people, yes. The people that I call my friends, my family, I hold close to me, yes. But the people I don't like, that are weird, they interfere with my happiness, I don't cherish them. Right? We have our preferences going on, and in that way we keep on creating karma. We keep on creating stories. We keep on creating a lifetime after lifetime of dissatisfactory experience, not being able to liberate ourselves of what keeps us bound in reoccurring suffering, namely ignorance, clinging at I and mine, and the attachment and anger and delusions arising from that. That's the Buddha's diagnosis, at least. That's something for us to think about. And the interesting news is, to make a change with respect to that, we don't have to redesign and change and refurnish our environment. I'm not saying we shouldn't care for the environment. Yes, we should. But my point being, we don't have to change the other person. It's not that, yes, I would be happy and relaxed if only the other people would change. Buddhism turns it around and say, here we change in here. We change our attitude, our outlook. We change our mind. That is really the point in Buddhism. As a Buddhist, you become an inner being. That's what a Buddhist actually means, an inner person, finding the solution to your problems within, in your outlook, how you apprehend things, how you look at things, trying to correct your view. When you correct your view, then you'll be able to see the benefit of that. And then you'll be able to much more effectively also help others to do the same. Like that. That's basically what I wanted to share with you. And of course, there's so much to be said about this. And of course, I'm not really qualified actually to really go into details about these points, but just for us to get a little bit of a taste, a little bit of a feel of, whoa, maybe there's something there that I really would like to deepen my knowledge about, or deepen my knowledge of, to, increase my wisdom of how things actually are, and through that also further develop my compassion towards others. Because we are all in the same boat in this. We are all suffering from that. And that's sometimes also what I try to kind of remember, especially when you get into conflict with somebody else, to see this person is grasping at I and mine. That's why this person has attachment and anger. That's why this person is acting the way they're acting. Maybe why they cause suffering to others, why they are angry or manipulative or arrogant or thoughtless. It's because they grasp at I and mine, have strong self-cherishing, and act the way they act due to that. It's not like, oh my God, this person is so selfish. No. We would say, how sad this person has this strong sense of selfishness in their minds, which causes them to act in that way. I recognize that in myself too. I also have that. How sad. What can I do? What can I do? How can I help? Venerable Rubina Kutin would often say, when you are faced with anger from somebody, instead of getting angry in return, switch your mind and think, what can I do to help? What can I do to be of benefit? Intelligently. That though is only possible when we have a little bit of a grip on, a handle on our own grasping at I and mine and me and not you and like that, right? So it starts with inner work. Anyway, that's what I was thinking a bit, right? Like that. What do you think? Any questions about this? Anything at all? Or maybe also online, anything at all that you would like to add on to this? Maybe we start first with the question here. Yeah. Yeah.
So, for examining the separate self, let's take the example of deep sleep. When we are in deep sleep, there is no awareness of the body. Neither there is any awareness of the mind. We are in deep sleep.
You're basically not conscious at that moment.
Yes.
Doesn't mean there's no consciousness there, but you are in deep sleep. Yeah.
Yes. So at that moment, there is no consciousness of body or mind or anything.
There's no awareness of that, no active
So do we, when that connection is not there, that aggregate is not, something is not aware of the aggregate of body and mind, that something still exists, that separate I or whatever?
Well, in the first place, a separate I does not exist, even when you are awake, right?
Yes.
There's no separate I, but I think what you're meaning is that mere I, that exists, the valid I that exists, does that still exist also in a state of deep sleep? Well, I think it's actually a very good question. And I would say, yes, it does exist at that time. But just as you are not aware of any sense impression because your senses lie dormant, and maybe you also do not have a dream because you are in deep sleep, you know. For us, I mean, we experience that like a blackout, right? In the evening, you go to bed, you knock yourself unconscious, and then miraculously, you wake up. But you feel time has passed, don't you? Kind of. And you know, the moment you wake up,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
And the moment you fall asleep, what did that horrible person say to me? If I were ever to see them again, unconscious, you wake up. If I were to see them, then it continues, right? So there is,
That period.
during that period, I think it would be very difficult to argue that the mere I goes out of existence during that period, although where you are in deep sleep. I don't think that this is the case, that there is no I there. That the mere I exists because we don't have to actively mentally designate I for the mere I to exist.
But that mere I is the conglomeration or aggregate of all of this body and mind, and that itself is dormant.
Well,
So by that logic,
well, the mere I is not the collection of body and mind. But in dependence upon the collection of body and mind, the I is designated. But does that mean that we have to consciously always designate I? Also doesn't seem to be the case. And it's actually a very difficult topic, I have to say. It's actually a very difficult point, and I think a very good point. And I'm quite sure it's debated a lot. What happens to the mere I when you're in deep sleep and unaware of anything? Where does it go? Is it there or not? I'm afraid I'm not perfectly able to answer that question. I've not really asked myself that question in that way, to be honest. So let me investigate, and then I'll write you. What about that? It's a good excuse, huh? It's a good way out.
I have one more.
Okay.
When we were discussing about nirvana or nibbana yesterday,
Yeah.
so the status of nirvana is the absence of permanent things, absence of everything.
Absence of everything.
Yes, that absence is permanence.
Can I stop you right? Can I jump in there? Yesterday we talked about nirvana, which is the Sanskrit word for liberation. So here we're referring to somebody having achieved nirvana, let's say, a person becoming liberated from what? From suffering and its causes, right? Technically speaking, we would say somebody who is completely free of afflictive obscurations, namely the ignorance, the conception, grasping at inherently existent I and mine, that is gone, completely moved, as well as also the attachment and the anger and the delusion that arise from that conception, gone, together with also the seeds of the conception of ignorance, together, and the seeds of all the delusion, they are all removed from the mind, they are absent. A mind that has removed the afflictive obscurations is a mind that is liberated, have achieved nirvana. So we're not talking about the absence of everything. We're not talking about that nirvana is a state where you as a person become permanent or something like that. But the very fact that these afflictive obscurations have been removed from the mind, that does not change anymore. The absence of afflictive obscurations in that mind is permanent, in a sense that it will never change again. In other words, you can never ever fall back into a state of ignorance, not knowing and experiencing suffering due to delusions, so forth. That is finished, bas, finito. It will never come back again. So that absence of afflictive obscurations in the mind is permanent. Yes.
So that stage is somewhat we can call emptiness.
That is not a state we call emptiness, no. We cannot call that state emptiness. Emptiness is not a state that we are in. Emptiness refers to the ultimate nature of phenomena, as well as also the person. It refers, emptiness refers to ultimate truth, namely the very absence of inherent existence. Emptiness is a mere negation. It is a refutation of what? Independent self-existence, which is now wrongly grasped at to exist, whereas it doesn't exist. So, and it's not that when we achieve nirvana, we are in a state of emptiness. But by way of a practitioner, a person that has developed her mind on the path, she eventually, due to her strong study of that subject and strong meditation, by way of achieving a union of calm abiding and a special insight that directly or first conceptually realizes emptiness, understanding it, by way of her meditating on that further and further, she will eventually enter into a state of mind, which is called the path of seeing, where she has a direct realization of emptiness, which is a direct realization of the absence of inherent existence. Then her mind is realizing ultimate truth directly. And that is what they call a non-dual state, maybe. Be careful, but right, that's where you are. The mind that realizes emptiness and the emptiness that is realized by that mind. You know, that the person seems has to have no, it's not a feeling of I am here realizing that. They express it, call it like pouring water into water. That is the beginning of eliminating certain levels of afflictions. You know? But then you come out of that state again, and your reality, how you see things, is very different, right? But it's not that you are in that state of emptiness forever. It's not like that. You either realize it directly, or you are coming out of that meditative equipoise, not realizing emptiness directly, but you go about your daily life influenced by that wisdom of emptiness. Yeah? It is only at the time of a Buddha, a fully enlightened person, who is somebody who is constantly in meditative equipoise, directly realizing emptiness of everything, while at the same time also seeing all conventional truths, all things that are empty at the same moment. Apart from a Buddha, no one can do that. Anyway, just
abiding in emptiness is not.
Abiding in emptiness is when you are an Arya Bodhisattva directly realizing emptiness, being in meditative equipoise, realizing emptiness. Maybe we could say that this person abides in the realization of emptiness. You don't abide in emptiness as if it were like a hot bath, like a substance, like, oh, this is emptiness. Emptiness is not a particular thing that you have. It refers to the absence of inherent existence. That's what emptiness means.
It's a higher state than Nibbana.
It is not a higher state as Nirvana. It is actually what you need to realize in order to even achieve Nirvana.
Okay. One more this follow.
Okay.
When we attain that meditative insight of Nibbana or emptiness or both, who is it who is realizing this?
The person.
Who is that person?
It's the mere person. The mere person, which is, you know, like an arhat, a liberated person, let's say, a person who has achieved nirvana. Who is that person that experiences nirvana? Well, it is the person, this mere person, which is designated and depends upon that body and that particular mind, which has present within it an absence of afflictive obscurations.
That person is very persistent. It is there to realize that also.
Well, that person is, I don't know how persistent it is, but I'm sure he or she or they have a good time. Right? I think they are quite blissful, that's for sure. They're quite happy.
Thank you.
Welcome. Maybe let's, Atisha, maybe we can have a question from you. Can you unmute yourself?
Thank you, Venerable Wangdu. Thank you. This is a technical question, please. And a method to transform a suffering life into happiness, like daily meditation. And blessing the speech is a part that I always ask about this. First, purify the truly existent I into happiness. So I guess the I, it doesn't exist. So when I read it, I have this way please, can you help me? Thank you.
Repeat. I'll repeat the question. There is no, I'll repeat it for people in the room. I'll repeat it for them so they hear it, because we are only having the speakers here. She's asking, there's a particular daily practice often put together by Lama Zopa Rinpoche, where it's a practice of prayers that we recite in the morning. And then one part of these prayers is how to bless the speech. And there's a little paragraph in that, after you take refuge in Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, there's a paragraph that says, first, purify the truly existent I in emptiness, no? Not happiness. You said happiness, but that's maybe also good. Purified in happiness, I also like. Yeah, but purify the truly existent I in emptiness. Yeah. So what does that mean? How do you do it? Because we just said there is no I. So how do you purify it in emptiness? What does it mean? Well, what Lama Zopa Rinpoche is saying here is, when Rinpoche says purify the truly existent I in emptiness, Rinpoche means notice you're grasping at a truly existent I. Notice how you feel that there exists a truly existent I here, a very concrete, independently existent I, and then purify that in emptiness, in a sense of realize that such a truly existent I is actually not to be found. Basically, Rinpoche refers to meditate on what we have been discussing, especially in the first part of this session. Meditate on how the I that appears to be so concretely, you close your eyes and you think, oh, the I appears to be so concretely there, me, Atisha, totally existing independently, but then apply your wisdom just to get a feeling of, actually, Atisha doesn't exist in that independent, concrete way, the way it appears. Atisha is merely labeled by the mind, much more fluid, much more open, less concrete. And in that way, purify that grasping at concreteness, just to some degree. I think if we do that, just to loosen our grasp a bit, become less concrete, and to develop an open, blissful mind, just meditating on your understanding of emptiness, just for a short while, that's good enough. That's, I think, what Lama Zopa Rinpoche refers to here. Because based on that, then, based on that feeling of emptiness, of dependent openness, then you would visualize yourself, if you have proper empowerment, as a deity, or if you do not have particular empowerment, Lama Zopa Rinpoche's advice would be to visualize yourself as Shakyamuni Buddha. You visualize yourself as the Buddha. That you can also do without having received any particular tantric initiation, like that. Does that help a bit? Okay, good, lovely. Anything else in here? Otherwise, we continue maybe with one or two more questions online.
Questions online.
Yeah. Oh, Freddie says bye. Thanks, Freddie. All right, Simran, hi.
Hello, Venerable Wangdu. So my question is a bit, first of all, is my voice clear? Because my reception is very poor. So let me know. And my question is, my question is a bit psychological. So you mentioned that Venerable Rubina says that if somebody is angry at you, you ask yourself, how can you help? But the question that comes to my mind is, what if somebody is angry at me? That also brings up certain emotions in me and certain reactions. If I don't address them and rather think, okay, what can I do to help this person? I am in a way suppressing what is coming up in me. And if I am not a fully resourced person myself, then how can I really help somebody else?
I do understand. Yes, very good.
Question audible?
Yes, I understood. Did you also hear? Yes, good.
Yes.
You also heard in class. So I personally think when we say, how can I help? It does not necessarily only refer to how can I help that other person to be less angry, or how can I help them that they get what they want. but it's how can I now act in a way that will be helpful for the whole situation, and that includes you and your emotional state also. How can I not react with delusion, with further anger, which will perpetuate, right, suffering in myself and also the other person, although it might feel very strong, yes, I'm going to get angry back, or no, you would, in Buddhist jargon, would start to first of all practice patience. Okay, here is anger happening. Anger is present. I understand. What can I do? And of course, that is possible only, thank you so much, for a trained mind to catch your own triggers that come up, right? And without suppressing them or saying, oh, they're not important, I shouldn't think about myself, I only think about the other person to help them. No, you see, this is what this situation brings up within me. This person is also triggered. You, due to your own wisdom and your patience, in that moment, catch yourself and see, many factors play out now in this situation. What can I do? What would be the best way for me to react now in order to cause the least suffering to that person, to myself, and to the whole situation? So my point being, how can I help does not only mean how can I now help that person, but how can I be helpful for both of us? What will be helpful? That's how I think. And that includes you yourself as well, right? That is because maybe you think, okay, this anger that comes here is so triggering for me, I cannot control my response. I cannot control my reaction. Therefore, how can I help? I can only be helpful by removing myself from the situation. For example, I have to take a step back. I have to get myself out of that situation to then, from within, a new standpoint, being able to reflect on how to go about that situation. So there are many ways. But I don't think that this statement by Venerable, I mean, she also said it in a particular context, right? But that this statement only means it's not a one-way situation. It's a two-way situation, all around, always situation. You hear what I mean?
Yes, yes. Thank you. Thank you very much. Yes, I understand.
Okay, wonderful. Good. Thank you. All right.
I think there is another question which Sanjay's iPhone wants to ask. It's sitting online.
Sure. Maybe we have this one more, and maybe then already 1.5 hours. Maybe then we call it a session.
Sanjay, can you?
Yeah,
Oh,
thank you so much, Venerable. I'm
okay.
sorry, camera is maybe off because I'm not feeling well. So I want that, so what does one see as himself now? There is no inherently existing I, understand. I mean, no inherently existing cars or phenomena. Then who gets enlightenment? And I mean, what one should see oneself as? Because when you interact with others, it is always because in relation that, either I'm acting as a stranger or a friend or an
Yes.
employee or a brother or a father or a son. Is always in relation. So what does one see oneself as?
You just had said the answer, Sanjay. You see yourself as a relational person.
Relative existence, right?
You are a relatively existent person.
Got it.
It's exactly what you say. Because, in dependence upon your son, you are a father, or your daughter, whoever it is. In dependence
Yeah,
upon your brother, you are a brother. In dependence upon your parents, you are a son. In dependence upon your job, you are this particular employee or employer, right? In dependence upon your hobbies, you are a musician or an artist or a stamp collector. In dependence upon your sports you do, you are a golf player. And with respect to all these situations, you, as Sanjay, will act and react differently, won't you? You
right.
basically act and react always relative to what's going on. if you can then see yourself as a relative, interdependent being, that behind all of your actions and reactions, with respect to relative to what is going on and who you are interacting with, there is no other inherent sanjaya that does all this. There is mere sanjaya in that moment doing that, and there is nothing more needed for sanjaya to function and work and exist. Yeah. And it's that sanjaya that now feels a little bit sick because the body is a little bit sick, right?
Yeah.
There is no inherently existent sick sanjaya anywhere to be found. It's a temporary situation. Well, that sanjaya, in dependence upon understanding that relativity, that interdependent situation that you are, so to say, will, by way of reflecting on that more and more and increasing your wisdom, increasing your compassion, your positive thinking, your understanding, your meditation, you do study, reflection, and meditation, you move along to develop this mind, you move along to develop yourself on the path, and that relationally existed sanjaya will one day achieve a state of nirvana and enlightenment. And then, even when you're a Buddha, you are existing in a relative way. Right? But there simply is no other way of existence needed, not to say even possible, than this kind of interdependent relative existence. That is what existence is. I would say, I think we can say that. So and now I don't hear you. Now you're muted, Sanjay.
So, I mean, who is the one who is existing moment to moment? So
who is that?
The one who is existing moment to moment, you know.
Yeah, the one that is existing moment to moment. I mean, there's also a sanjaya of the past, but that sanjaya is not there anymore, right? And often we might think about, if I think about me in the past, I have a certain picture of who and what I was in the past. But you know what? I'm the only one who has that picture of myself. Everyone else thinks about that differently. I think it's a really incredible insight to make that how I experienced my past, first of all, is experienced, is finished. And how I think about it now is how I think about it now. And the mind is very tricky. It changes things. It forgets one part, adds on to another part, and we have our story going on. And then you might ask your best friend how that happening was 15 years ago, and they tell you a completely different story and say, no, that didn't even happen. And he says, of course it did. So it's all a bit, we are completely messed up a bit, right? With respect to who we think we were, who we are right now. My point being, yes, the moment-to-moment sanjaya. I guess so. Yeah. But still you can make plans, right? Aspirations of, that's what I experienced in the past. These are the causes I created. They create what I am now. And right now, I'm nothing more but being the sanjaya or the Wangdu that experiences the results of past causes. And by way of how I react to these results, what happens in my life now, that creates new causes for what's going to happen in the future. So in this way, we are constantly experiencing the results of what happened in the past, or what we created in the past, and we are creating what's going to happen next. So that is the whole topic of karma comes into that again. So karma, cause and effect, and emptiness go together perfectly well. That's what we have to understand. That because the I is empty of inherent existence, therefore it exists interdependently, is a dependent arising on basis of causes and conditions, parts, and on the most fundamental level, mental designation.
Thank you so much, Venerable. Thank you so much. It was really a very insightful session.
Okay, great. Very good. Thank you so much. In that way, thank you so much, everybody. I think maybe we call it a session. So 1.5 hours. So let's do that. Maybe let's just take a minute or two to dedicate, you know, what we did here. In accordance with the advice of the masters of this tradition. It's always extremely important. We didn't really, actually, it's not my fault, we didn't really generate a positive motivation in the beginning. We kind of jumped right in, but implicitly, we generated a motivation to do this in order to develop our minds in terms of increasing our wisdom. And now in the end, we can simply think, by us having attended this session here, talking about the wisdom realizing emptiness of the self and dependent arising, just getting a taste of this, just to flirt with it a bit. May whatever insight we might have gained, however slight it might be, may whatever aha moment we have experienced, may all of that become a cause for us to be able to develop a full-blown realization of the nature of reality. May all of us always have the conditions coming together for us to be able to study the Buddhist teachings without obstacle. May we be able to develop our mind along this path of wisdom as well as compassion, so that we ourselves may achieve a state of liberation from suffering, as well as full enlightenment, so that then in turn be able to help others to do the same. So we can have the most positive influence on other sentient beings, diminishing suffering and increasing genuine happiness in this world. Gewadi nududa glama sangye tukune doba jikang malupa de sala gepa shok changtup semchok rinpoche mage panam gigete geba nampa mepa yang lunge gongdu pelvashi doni dawa rinpoche mage panam gigete geba nampa mepa yang gongdi gongdu pelvashu gangri rabe korbe tingam de pentang deva malu chungvene chenre zingwangren zinga tsuye sapesi te patu den gyuchi. Okay, thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, Venerable, for the two-day talk.
So welcome.
Thank you everyone for joining in online and in person. And we would like to offer you a little appreciation,
yeah.
token of appreciation.
Thank you
you so
very
much.
Chocolate.
You'll find out. Thank you everyone for joining in online. Also, the recordings of this session will be uploaded on our YouTube channel. So if anyone wants to take a look at it again, we can do that. And hopefully Venerable will again pass through Delhi and give us a teaching and maybe the meditation on emptiness next time. If that's
Maybe,
possible.
yeah. Why not?
Until then, thank you everyone. Also, we have our programs coming up. We have more programs coming up over the next couple of weeks, and you guys can check about it, learn more about it on the Tushita website, tushitadelhi.com. And also we have morning meditations which are continuing from Monday to Friday, 9 to 9:30 a.m. So you can join that online. Yes, I think that is it. So thank you everyone. Thank you for joining in.
Thank you.
Thank you, Venerable.
Thank you. Bye. Bye. Thanks for having me.
Quite abrupt.
Oh, no problem. That's all good. All fine. Ah, yeah.